Unrest Podcast.
Welcome to episode 7 of the Unrest Podcast. I'm Caitlin Stansel.
I'm Madeline Green.
And I am Carter Coyle. It is so hard to believe, y'all, we're already halfway through June and pretty much halfway through 2020 at this point. It does not feel like it's been half of a year.
No, not at all. And it's almost my birthday.
Oh, yeah.
How old are you going to be?
I'm going to be 31.
Ooh, good year.
Yeah. This year has flown by.
What's the date of your birthday?
The 22nd.
Pencil it in.
I need presents, cards, everything. Starbucks, please.
Obviously, that'll be a celebration, but at the same time, I always forget that June has like so many painful anniversaries until it comes back around again. And right now, Carter and I, well, Carter mostly, she's been working on stories for a TV special about the Mother Emanuel AME church shooting. And this Wednesday, of course, marks 5 years since 9 parishioners were killed during a Bible study there. And Carter, were you working in Charleston at the time that happened?
I was still working in North Carolina when the church shooting happened, but they immediately sent me from North Carolina down here. So I was here that morning after and was here. I can't remember. I think it was a day or two just round the clock live with one of our anchors. And it was horrible, of course, as you can imagine. My husband and I wanted to move to Charleston. So I always looked at it as a second home since we visited here all the time. So it was kind of the first time I had to report on something that tragic that really hit close to home and felt like my own community. And so then when I ended up moving here and have covered the remembrances every year, it's more and more. And then one of the first assignments I had when we moved here was covering the Dylan Roof trial, the federal trial, every day for what felt like months. And it was really hard. That was the hardest thing I've ever done as a reporter. It was horrible to feel, because of course as a human you just want to cry, and it's just the most hearing these testimonies every day and hearing about the horror of it. But then as a journalist, you're embarrassed to cry or to show any emotion, but it's almost impossible not to. So it was a real struggle. But
I was just going to say, I can't believe that it's been 5 years. It doesn't seem like it's been that long.
I know that's what a lot of people have been saying. So hopefully y'all can catch that little plug for Live 5 in our special, because I think it will be good. We're trying not to focus on the, events of that night. Really, everyone already knows the details. Everyone knows the suspect. We don't need to talk about that. It's really more about the families, where they are now, and kind of some of the amazing charities they've started and the books that they've written, and the forgiveness that they've given him. So it's going to be, I think, more uplifting and hopefully less depressing.
Right.
That's our goal.
And that forgiveness that you talked about yesterday, I interviewed a pastor who was really close friends with one of the victims, Clemente Pinckney. And he made an interesting point about that message of forgiveness after the shooting. He said it was so powerful and needed and good, but it also kind of derailed the really necessary conversation that we're seeing kind of spark up again now in the wake of George Floyd's death and during these protests, that Black Lives Matter, and that they're targeted in ways that many of us could, never imagine, because we've never had to live through the same kind of prejudice and fear. And that after that message of forgiveness, it kind of made it easier for people to move on in a sense. And people were kind of distracted by that and not able to continue that conversation about action and change that needed to happen after, Mother Emanuel.
Forgiving doesn't always, you have to forget quickly. And yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think I don't know, it's so hard, especially living in the South. There are so many people who feel like, it's that race is really not an issue anymore. And it just blows my mind that they would even think that. And it makes me really sad, because just knowing, people and seeing it, like you can see it daily, the mistreatment, and they just get treated differently, and it's not fair. And it's frustrating for sure. But this month also marks the anniversaries of the Orlando nightclub shooting.
Oh, that's right.
And the Sofa Superstore fire that killed 9 Charleston firefighters.
That was a horrible one too. That happened just a day, one date's difference, although it was years before. That was really the Charleston 9, and then we refer to the Emmanuel 9. But
right.
And my dad being a retired firefighter, that changed the whole industry. What happened to those firefighters, and it was a horrible way to die. And man, that's another one that's just like so much pain for our community still.
And it's interesting, because of the pandemic and all, to see how these kind of remembrance ceremonies are changing. Because I know yesterday we were just talking about how for the Sofa Superstore fire that they're going to have to hold that ceremony online this year and kind of stream it over Facebook instead of the normal ceremony they have at the site with the family members coming out and all of that.
Caitlin, have you seen the fire station that they are constructing right next to the site? And it's coming up. It looks beautiful. It's taken a long time for them to get there, but it sure looks pretty. They had 9 huge 2 or 3 story windows, each representing each of the firefighters, and it's going to be a really beautiful tribute.
I haven't been by there in a while recently, but the last time, I kind of saw like the structure of it, and it did look very beautiful.
It's coming along, so that'll be cool to see.
Yeah, I think it's always good that, after these terrible events, that they do stuff like that to kind of bring remembrance to them, where you can visit and you can just kind of have some kind of happiness to their memories instead of just so much pain.
And at least with the fire, the kind of symbol of their death was wiped out, the building and all. So they were able to kind of reconstruct this really beautiful thing in their memory.
Obviously, we talk spooky things and haunting, so we talk a lot about death on the podcast. It is a part of life ultimately. So share your stories with us. What does June mean to you? What does 2020 mean to you? Post it on our group. But today I'm taking you to a little bit of a rival of Charleston, which is Savannah, Georgia.
It'll never be as good though.
Well, I grew up in Georgia, and so I remember this kind of like, do you love Savannah or do you love Charleston vibe? Being from Georgia, I definitely am supposed to be loyal to Savannah. I love Savannah, but Charleston's my home now, so it's number 1. But anyone who's been to both cities, they're totally different cities. They really are. You might assume they're both like full quaint, coastal, southern, epitome of the South cities, but I think they're just so very different when you actually visit them, and the histories are different. So I thought it'd be fun to visit there, because Savannah, maybe even more so than Charleston, is really known for ghost tours and hauntings and paranormal activity. It's one of the most haunted cities in the United States, for sure. I'm talking specifically today about a part of Savannah downtown called Wright Square, WRIGHT. And Wright Square, it's a really beautiful landmark. Picture the whole area of these squares downtown Savannah in the moss-covered trees and huge statues and monuments. And as I was reading that Savannah was founded in 1733, and the original layout was just 4 city squares. And actually, Wright Square is also sometimes called Hanging Square. So you can imagine what sort of things happen there. There's a courthouse. People are found convicted, found
some hanging out,
and then we hang out. Yeah, it's no hanging out. I guess it is, but how could there not be all sorts of ghosts and spirits around somewhere that's nicknamed Hanging Square? But nowadays, at one point there were 24 squares. Now there's 22, and each of them, as they developed over the years, has its own historic monuments and legends and ghosts. So it's kind of, I imagine, walking through it with that perspective, you could probably almost date each square and when it was built just based on what you see. So that's kind of cool. But there are many forgotten grave sites in the area. They certainly built the city over Native American burial grounds. Some were moved, but many were not. And even when they did find them, a lot of times bones were just tossed aside. So a lot of unrest, of course, and desecrated graves. So today, Wright Square, there are several ghosts that have been seen in the area, including one of a Native American chief. But the one that's most well known and maybe one of the most famous ghosts in Savannah is Alice Riley. And this is kind of a tale of a ghost who's out for revenge, is what it sounds like. So I have, I'll give you some background on Alice Riley and her story, and then I have an excerpt of a real life encounter with a ghost in Wright Square that I'll read. And who knows if it was Alice or not, but sounds like it. Basically, Alice Wright and her husband, lover, I'm not really sure if they were actually married, but they were Irish indentured servants, and they came here hoping, like so many people, for a better life. Survived this absolutely miserable trip across the Atlantic, almost starved to death, but they did get to Savannah safely. And while they weren't technically slaves, they didn't have any rights. You basically have the service contract as an indentured servant, and you're indebted deeply to whomever had paid for your journey here. So Alice Riley and this guy Richard were financed by a man in Savannah named William Wise, and he was a cattle farmer not too far away from town. And he, unlike some of the masters who maybe were decent people and just needed work and help, he was known for being a bad guy, a hard master, forcing servants to work longer than they had agreed ahead of time, and known for making the women who worked for him like bathe him and dress him. Ew, like
gross.
grossy. So it's fairly well understood that he definitely sexually assaulted and raped Alice and beat her, berated her, and humiliated her in front of her husband. And the story goes that one day he was found dead in his bedchambers, and that Alice and Richard, unlike the other servants who were still farming and out there working, Alice and Richard were nowhere to be found. So the immediate assumption is that they were guilty of it. And the story goes that they got sick of all this abuse, or perhaps he was trying to rape her again, and they said not this time, and couldn't take it anymore, and supposedly strangled him with a scarf and then held his head under a bucket of water, because that's how he was found. And they ran away,
That's
but
a great idea.
were caught later. Yeah. So if that's true, that you're being like repeatedly sexually assaulted and at some point you just can't take it anymore, I ain't got no sympathy for Mr. William Wise. But
I mean, that's not like the most discreet way to murder someone.
I was thinking that too. Like maybe throw him back in bed and take the scarf off. Like
maybe they didn't want to be discreet.
But for the record, they declared their innocence till their dying days, so maybe they didn't really do it. But they were caught, arrested, and sentenced to death by hanging, of course, in Hanging Square. And this information, by the way, is from a really cool website called nightlyspirits.com. So I wanted to give them a shout out. And they said that this was supposedly the first murder in Savannah. And so even if this couple was innocent, the townspeople and the government folks wanted to make an example that murder is not tolerated, won't be tolerated here. So whatever, we're just going to hang him anyway, because we have to have basically something to show for this guy who was murdered. And a lot of this at the time, there was anti-Irish sentiment, there was anti-Catholic sentiment. So even if they were innocent, apparently they didn't have any qualms about hanging them as an example. But right before they were set to be hanged, there was kind of a plot twist, and Alice Riley turns out to be pregnant. And the assumption being that it was probably the baby of this William Weiss master who had sexually assaulted her. So they allowed her to put off execution until after she gave birth. How very gracious of them. Riley, eventually though, as soon as she has her baby, she's sent to the gallows. She's still screaming her innocence, and they force her into the noose, drag her up there. And apparently the whole time she's just begging and screaming to see her baby one last time, which is so sad. Her body's left to hang there for 3 days, crows pecking at her, and again, it's just left there as an example. Pretty gruesome. And apparently her husband at some point briefly escaped, but then he was also hanged. And even more tragically, the little baby James died just 2 weeks later. So he even didn't have a shot at life. And one website I read said that Alice was buried next to the gallows where she was hanged, which is, ugh, what terrible way to spend your eternal peace, right? And another website I read said that that Alice and her baby were buried together near Wright Square. So whether or not she was actually buried with her baby, I'm not really sure. But without a doubt, there are now plentiful ghost sightings of kind of a translucent woman wandering Wright Square looking for her child. Some say that she cursed the city as she was hanged, and one legend even says that Spanish moss will never grow where innocent blood has been spilled, and that maybe that's why there are some trees in Wright Square that don't have any moss on them, strangely enough. Other legends say that she only appears as a ghost to mothers who have babies, and that she tries to take babies thinking they're hers.
So don't go
but
there.
Yeah. So that's a definite theme of her appearances to people, that she is looking for her child. And according to this one report that I read, one report was that tourists are often calling the Savannah Police Department and saying, there's a woman here who's looking for her child. She's in Wright Square. And that the officers kind of know, nope, it's Alice. She ain't real. And rookies will get sent out as a joke to look for Alice and her baby. They never find anything, and then they're kind of looped into the joke.
That's pretty cool.
Gosh.
Interesting, huh? So even though she is spotted and has been described in old-fashioned clothing back in the day, nobody really thinks anything of it because there's so many reenactments, and like even a lot of the guided tours, people are in period costumes. So that doesn't necessarily throw folks off until they hear the story of Alice.
I wonder if you did a Freedom of Information Act request, how many reports would come back for that?
You know, I thought of that too. As soon as I read that, I was like, is that real? I want to know how many calls they get. Oh, there was one report of a woman who she and her daughter were trying to leave Wright Square, and the girl kept hearing footsteps, and then someone knocked her backpack. She took a picture really quickly, and there was an orb in it, which, you know, we've talked about and y'all have seen before.
The orbage.
The orbage.
Mm-hmm.
And this local Savannah historian named Rebecca Clark, she talked to a man named James Caskey, who wrote a book called Haunted Savannah. And so Ghost City Tours has this on their website, kind of this whole encounter they describe, where this historian, Rebecca Clark, says that she got in her car one evening near Wright Square, I believe. And as soon as she got to it, she knew something weird was happening, because she opened the door, and despite it being a steamy Savannah summer night, the car had this rush of icy cold air come out of it. And she was like, uh-oh. And so she said she was like looking around to see if anybody was there, couldn't find anybody, decided to go home, and just felt weird and unsafe in her car. Well, she gets home, gets out of her car, locks up, goes to bed, and even her dog is acting weird. Like, there's something going on here. There's something following you, hiding under the covers, which is not like her dog. And then suddenly in the middle of the night, like all the electrical devices started going haywire. The TV, the VCR, the stereo, the computer, everything started turning on and blaring. Okay, like I'm terrified if that happens. That would
leaving my house.
that would be so scary. So apparently she just like she shut off the bedroom door, was hiding in there with her dog under the covers, and just waited for morning. But at that point she was convinced that like a spirit of some sort had come home with her.
Right.
And then this account says the next morning after the strange incidents in her car, Rebecca woke up and went to check on her office. She found everything was exactly as it should be, despite hearing all that paranormal activity. But then a few days later, she had to go back downtown. She opens her car door and has that same rush of icy air, even though it was a hot day. And she said, the whole ride downtown, I tried to talk to the spirit. Anyone talking to me would have just figured I was singing to the radio, I guess. But basically, I was telling whoever it was that I was going back downtown and they needed to get out, or just get out whenever they wanted. So and then she says, as soon as I got near Wright Square, I felt the presence leave. And that was the last experience I had with it.
Oh, wow.
So that was like a very vivid and detailed account of a spirit from Wright Square that actually went home with her, scared her, and then went back on once it got back to the square. So Hanging Square, known for scary stuff. So those are a few of the ghost accounts and Alice Riley. I'm sure there's so much more to the story because y'all know how it is as you research. Like every account is different, but the idea of this poor woman and everything she'd gone through to get here, and then she gets assigned to this terrible abusive guy, and I mean,
I would be haunting
yeah, such a
the
sad
square as
life,
well.
and be basically forced away from your infant to be executed. Yeah, that sounds like the makings of a haunting.
It's crazy how you said that the lady's dog was like going crazy. It's so neat how dogs and animals can sense that type of thing better than we can.
Definitely. They can see and hear and smell so much better than us, so it's not surprising. But yeah, it's pretty amazing. So that's the haunting of Wright Square, specifically Alice Riley. But there is, again, it sounds like just about every square there has its own haunting and figures. So definitely a city we might have to revisit again.
And in this week's Spook School, I'm going to tell you why there might be so many ghosts in Savannah.
Ooh.
And Carter, you alluded to this, but one reason for that is because it was apparently built upon the dead. And I went on a ghost tour there one time, actually.
Did you?
Yes, it was the worst ghost tour I've ever been on.
Why?
It was just very
'Cause I didn't do it.
yeah, it was very like staged and like at one point we were in this room and they like turned the lights on and off and stuff like that. I know.
I went on a really terrible one in St. Augustine, Florida. I was so excited. It was my birthday as well. And so, of course, I wanted to do a ghost tour. And it was like that. It was just not good.
I was so disappointed. And like I'd convinced AJ to go on it. He really didn't want to. I'm like, this is going to be awesome. Like we went to this house that's really haunted there and did a tour of it. But it was just like so overproduced.
Yeah.
For lack of a better way to describe it, it wasn't good. But Savannah is certainly haunted, and it's even been given the designation of the most haunted city in America from the American Institute of Parapsychology, if you didn't know.
The most haunted. That's something.
Yeah. So I think it got that designation back in like 2002 or 2012, one of those.
It's a big
We're
leap.
really accurate here.
It happened somewhere between 1989 and 2020.
we want to be accurate here, but we are talking about ghosts, okay, guys? Like,
but the designation, that's accurate. I just can't remember what year it was. Anyways, one reason for that is there's been a lot of bad stuff that's happened in Savannah. They've had yellow fever, war, famines, devastating fires, slavery, and then even natural disasters like hurricanes. Plus, the people who built the city and who lived there, they've kind of created this spooky aura around the city because it included an early population of colonists, again, slaves, voodooists, sailors, traders, and pirates, and all of that kind of spinning up unique social and religious beliefs. And I think that is kind of what makes Savannah so cool, is that it does have such an interesting history and so many cultures that have kind of created it into what it is today. And I found this interesting quote about the graves that linger underneath its streets and buildings from an article in the Emerald Coast magazine. And this guy talks about, he says, "It's a necropolis, a city built upon its dead. If human remains are found in Tallahassee while digging a sidewalk, everything stops. Forensic teams are called and the newspaper covers it. In Savannah, it happens all the time. There are children's playgrounds built on graves, and streets and sidewalks are built right over the top of human remains."
Ooh, wow. I wonder how much they even investigate it then.
I know. It probably like doesn't even make the news.
Yeah.
God, if you were a murderer, you just buries people's bodies around.
I know, and no one would be like, well, I guess it would look fresher maybe than the graves that they're talking about.
We don't condone that idea, by the way. We think we should not murder people, and I'm not afraid to take a stand on that.
Me neither. Do not murder. It's not a good thing.
Sometimes you might have to.
Well, Alice Riley certainly did. I'm sorry. If she did it, that was understood.
So one of the tours in Savannah talks about, it starts in this parking lot of a diner, where the asphalt, they say, hides the past. And the guide talks about beneath them at that point is the corner boundary of an old slave cemetery.
Mm.
And then other stories, they kind of go through how settlements and battlefields were left so unorganized, after people kind of moved on, that colonial grave sites, people just didn't know where they were when they started building the city. And they estimate that the historic section of Savannah covers 7 cemeteries with at least 9,000 graves.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Whoa.
And then this other guy in an article from CNN, he works with See Savannah walking tours, and he said he wouldn't be surprised if there are actually more. He said there's at least 14,000 documented graves in Colonial Park Cemetery alone, but it's hard to know for sure as not all of them lie within the current boundaries of the cemetery. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
So you can build the city on top of dead people, but have you ever seen the trees that come through like the sidewalk and they're not allowed to fix them or mess up the trees because the trees are like historical and whatnot, but you can build the whole city on dead people.
Trees are very precious even in Charleston.
Priorities.
If you do get to go on a tour in Savannah, I would suggest doing one of their trolley tours. I did it just AJ was at work down there and I was bored, so I went on one, and it was so interesting and really historical, and it was a great tour. And you can kind of jump on and off of it throughout the tour. You don't have to stay on the trolley the whole time. Anyways,
I love a good hop on, hop off tour.
Yeah. So if like there's something they're talking about that you kind of want to like a building you want to walk around, you can just hop off and go check it out and then wait for the next trolley to come by and get back on.
There's also a great beer bike tour.
Thanks.
A lot of fun. Just in case there's a drag show as well. It's fun.
Oh, wow.
All the
Not
bachelorette
haunted,
parties.
Savannah is very popular for bachelorette parties too.
That's where my bachelorette, well, actually my catlorette was in Savannah. It was cat themed.
Mine was a Wedstock.
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you know what I find? Nick still isn't been to Savannah, and I hate that because I feel like kind of a failure Georgian, but it's real expensive. Like their hotels there, I think, are even pricier than here. So you got to just commit to a whole weekend. Although I need to check Airbnb. I bet that has made it more affordable.
They also have a huge, which I haven't been to, but I've always wanted to, one of the biggest, is it St. Patrick's Day Festival?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the second biggest after Boston or something.
Yeah.
But it was canceled this year because of the pandemic.
It's crap.
Damn virus. We used to go to St. Patty's there in college every year. It's just such a shit show. It's so much fun. I don't think I could probably survive it now, but in college it sure was fun.
Ours was fun, but not like that, I'm sure.
They used to dye the Savannah River green for St. Patty's. Yeah. They don't do that anymore, probably environmental issues, but
yeah, they dyed the river there. They only dyed a little fountain in Columbia.
The one in Columbia is fun. It's just drinking now. Like, I don't know. I feel like Savannah has like more of a St. Patrick's Day like history.
They have a lot of Irish connection. And actually that makes more sense than I've ever realized reading that Alice Riley story today and how they had the indentured servants coming from Ireland. I don't know how many, but that makes sense that at some point there was that strong Irish connection to the port. I'm just making that up, but I think it's true.
It makes sense. Anyways, I bring up that trolley tour because on it, they were talking about how you might notice how bumpy the road is and how it dips down in certain spots. And they said that is because
oh no,
don't tell us.
Some of the areas built over graves have kind of sunken in, and they've even had to repair areas because they've basically become like sinkholes in the roadways.
Body sinkholes.
And apparently there's like a really extensive tunnel system under Savannah. I was reading this article where they were talking about how pirates use tunnels throughout the city. And also the Underground Railroad snuck slaves out of the city through tunnels. And there's even a man-made tunnel under the Savannah School of Law, I believe it was. And they use that to move bodies to like the coroner's office.
That's cool. What's so funny is today I was on Facebook and I saw this lady put up another thing about a tunnel in Walhalla, South Carolina. I was like, oh, that's cool.
I actually saw that the other day too. That's so
Yeah,
weird.
we'll have to do that one day.
And
Supposedly
then-
there's tunnels all over America.
interesting.
No kidding. Isn't it like the Denver airport or one of the airports?
Now, I will say the Denver airport is supposedly there's a bunch of weird stuff because
Aliens and all
yeah,
sorts of shit.
years ago when I was coming home from somewhere, I flew into the Denver airport and the man next to me was like trying to tell me about it. And I'm like, okay.
I think that one has some weird stuff.
Yeah. Caitlin, you might want to do that one because it has to do with aliens.
She
Okay.
hates it.
Okay.
We're just not gonna tell her one day and just do a whole alien one.
Ugh. I love
Well,
that. kind of stuff.
Madeline, you have our real life spook today, right? Tell us about it.
So today is our 7th episode, which means we picked from all the things that you guys sent us. We had so many emails to pour through.
Yeah,
and
we love hearing from you guys about your own stories.
yes, we love it. And so the winner of the Starbucks $5 gift card, I'm just kidding, $2 gift card. You get to have the $2
You can
left
only
on my
pay for
gift
half
card.
your drink. You can
We
only
will
pay for
not-
half your drink.
We won't cover tax. Sorry.
Starbucks gift card is going to go to, drum roll, like not a good drum roller. Neither are you. It goes to Taylor Smith.
Yay, Taylor!
She emailed us her story of Light Road is what it is called. So congratulations, Taylor, on your Starbucks gift card. Send us a message with your address and we'll send it to you.
And we know that, ghosts love Starbucks, so that's why we chose that as the gift.
That's
Yes,
right.
they love it. I hear they get a venti iced coffee.
Well, they have to have
With
the
cream and cheese
caffeine.
Splenda.
They have to have the caffeine to stay up all night.
I saw
I just made that up right there.
Gosh,
I
you're
saw
witty.
this shirt on Etsy and it said caffeinated to death, and I was like, this is us.
All right, so the story is called Light Road, and this is how she starts. Okay, kids, story time. Before I start on my experience, I'm going to give you a tiny bit of background on Light Road. Light Road was located in Somerville around now Azalea Plaza area. That's not far from you, Caitlin, huh?
About 5 minutes.
Legend is a man worked for the railway, and every night his wife would walk to meet him at night with a lantern. One day there was a train accident and the man was decapitated.
Ugh.
Yikes.
Now, depending on who tells the story, the light that you see is either his wife waiting for him with the lantern or she is looking for his head. Both versions of the story are told. People
That's
report
scary.
People report that they see a green light coming towards them and then it just disappears. So it was a popular place for people to go and hang out at night. Okay, now to my story. Going to high school in Somerville in 2003 to 2004, there wasn't much to do but hang out in the Walmart parking lot or ride around.
Sounds like Piedmont, South Carolina.
Me and Caitlin, we loved Sonic
We would just
Yeah.
go to Sonic
and like
we'd
sit there and listen to music.
That's how Snellville, Georgia was. We had
Right?
the option.
Is that where you're from?
Yeah.
Oh my
Snellville.
God, I've been there.
Where everybody's somebody.
That is so funny.
Taco Bell, Sonic, those are our options. Go
Right?
ahead.
Okay, back to it. They were at Walmart or riding around. Target had just been built along with the movie theater, but everything closed at like 8 o'clock. One night, myself and 4 friends are hanging out at my house and had just watched Wrong Turn. Throwback, she said. I don't think I ever saw that movie.
I don't think I did either, but it, scary movies always make for a scary night.
Right? I remember hearing about it, but for some reason, I never watched it.
Oh, there's even a Wrong Turn too.
Yeah. Who was in the Wrong Turn, the first one? It was who was the girl? Was that-
Desmond Harrington, Eliza Dushku. Oh, this is good. Wrong Turn 2 is called Wrong Turn 2, Dead End.
Ooh. So yeah.
Why didn't
So-
I think about that the first time?
So her 4 friends, they're hanging out, they're watching Wrong Turn. Eventually we got bored and decided to ride around and thought, why not go to Light Road? Now Light Road was in the woods behind what is now Kohl's, and the area has since been turned into a housing development. She said, which seems like an opportunity to be haunted, but whatever.
So true, girl.
But in 2003, it was a regular road that eventually turned into gravel and then woods. It was a popular spot for mudding, as well as drug deals and hookups.
Ooh, all the best 3 things in high school.
Right? Love a good mudding hookup.
With some drugs on top.
Well, as we are approaching the area of the road where the pavement ends and the gravel begins, oh, that just sounds good.
Like a country
Pavement
song.
ends and the gravel begins. I think it might be a song. We see a car coming towards us and they proceed to flash their lights. We pull past them and stop. So now we are facing the woods and they are on the pavement facing the way out. And both vehicles are just idling now. There's about a 2-foot gap between the bumpers. This comes into play later. And we can clearly see their faces out the back window. Now, in the vehicle I'm in, a Ford F-150, just in case y'all were wondering, there is the driver, the passenger, and 3 of us in the back. I'm in the middle, a guy on my left and a girl on my right. My friend who is driving is looking in his side view mirror, and myself and the guy on the left are turned looking out the back window at the other car, who are all staring at us. And the 2 girls are talking to each other. So they're kind of looking at that car back there, and they can see them talking and whatnot. So we are staring at them because we're trying to figure out why they flashed their lights at us. And we figured out later that they probably thought that we were their drug dealer.
Oh, yeah.
Right? You're like, oh, wait, is that him? I don't know. Y'all got my goods.
Give him a flash.
It's us.
Clearly, we're all really good at drug dealing.
We would be terrible. After a few minutes, I see a shadow walk between the bumpers of the cars, walking upright like a person, but solid black. Remember, the cars are close enough that something would have illuminated if it walked between them. So I thought I was bugging until both the guys say, "What the fuck was that?" And the people in the other car's eyes got wide and they sped off. So my friend does the fastest 3-point turn. It had to be. I can't even do a 3-point turn.
The fastest 21-point turn.
Yeah.
Runs over the bushes.
10 minutes later, we are out of there.
Yeah. My friend does the fastest 3-point turn I've ever seen and tries to chase them down to ask them what they saw, but we never got that chance. After that, I would refuse to go down the road after dark. It doesn't matter how many people I was with. Now, fast forward to about 6 or so years after this. My friend, who was the driver of the truck, is telling the story at a house party. And lo and behold, there was a guy listening who was in the other car that saw the exact same thing.
This is
So
a
crazy,
great story.
right?
No way.
So 4 people who saw the same thing can't be wrong, right?
In 2 different cars now.
Yes. I don't know who or what we saw, but I know it was something and it wanted to be seen. Then she says, "Sorry if this was confusing. Feel free to email me back if you have any questions. Sincerely,
Girl,
Taylor Smith."
no.
Taylor,
Ugh.
that was not confusing. It was just scary and really, really cool.
And
Right?
great, yes.
I was reading it and I was like, oh my God, yeah, that's so cool. And then when it said that the guy was at the house party who was in the other car, I'm like, cherry on top.
That's great. What
Drugs
did
on
they
top.
see? What did they see? What did they see? That,
I know.
because they're right. I mean, somebody's lights would have been illuminating enough to see it was a solid person, not just a black shadow person.
Right.
And like they didn't see where the shadow went.
Yeah. And I'm so curious because, you know, they said that this man who died there was decapitated. So, Taylor, did this man shadowy figure have a head?
Right.
There's
Ooh,
a lot
good
of
point.
questions.
Good point,
Yeah.
Madeline.
You know, I'm all about a good point.
This is why we want y'all to send us your stories. Awesome. And we're going to save the other ones that we've gotten because they all were really good.
Please keep sending them, though. We don't want to run out of real life spooks to share with you. And to do that, all you have to do is, like Taylor did, write into us at the Unrest Podcast at gmail.com, or you can share your story on our Facebook page or join our Facebook group. The Unrest
Or you can
Podcast.
call us, but I know none of you are going to do that.
Call us.
We got to do something really special for the first person that calls, because that you're going to get more than a
we just want
Starbucks
someone
gift
to
card.
call, first of all, to know
$7
that
card.
it works.
Yeah.
Give you $7 cold
Yeah.
cash.
That's all we
Once.
have between us.
And
$7.
here's the number. If you
Who's
feel
doing the 3?
if you
I'm
feel
just doing
enticed-
$2.
Oh, okay. I'll do 3.
Who's rich and got $3?
So now I got to do, wait,
You
so
got
that'd be
$2.
5. Okay, good too.
Okay.
Math.
So if you feel enticed to call in, that number is 843-564-2101. And if not, we're just going to start cold calling some of you people because we think it's fun to hear. But awesome stories. Thank you so much. We love y'all and appreciate you listening. We are going to have some exciting updates about possibly broadcasting on YouTube, one of our upcoming episodes, as soon as we can figure out how to do our makeup and hair again, because we haven't had to do that in a while.
Also, don't forget to listen to us on Apple or iHeartRadio, but please just leave us a rating or review. I would love that.
If it's a good one. Bye.
Yeah. We said that last time. Like, we don't want any bad reviews.
No,
Like, we want to keep our solid 5.0.
Don't listen
So,
if you don't like it. It's fine.
yeah, if you don't like it, just turn it.
Thank you all, and
Unrest in peace.